Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's event hosted by We Rise In. The title of today's event is New Year, New Role. We're looking at mid to senior level careers. We've got an amazing panel of HR specialists, talent development specialists, who will be speaking about sort of recruitment, developing yourself, how to kind of get your career to the next level in 2022. So tonight's schedule, I'll do a quick introduction to We Rise In for those who don't know who we are. I'll do that in a second. We'll then go into the panel discussion, which will last probably about 40 to 45 minutes. The panel discussion itself will last probably about 20, 25 minutes, and then we'll leave about 20 to 25 minutes for Q&As. And I think often with these events, the real value is in the Q&As. So as we're discussing and talking, if you have any questions, please pop it in the chat. You can either pop it to everyone so everyone can see your question, or you can pop it either to myself or any one of the other co-hosts if you want your question kind of to be fielded anonymously. So We Rise In, who are we? We are a business initiative and we're aimed at inspiring, elevating and developing the careers of Black professionals across corporate industries. So that's real estate, legal, finance, tech, you name it. And we're here to support and provide that career guidance and just getting Black professionals to those senior levels in industry, because as we all know, there is significant lack of representation at those kind of top levels. So that's what we're here. We're essentially a network and a community of mid to senior level Black professionals. So in terms of things we offer, we are a network. We have events, we hold seminars and also webinars during the last 2 years, because of the pandemic. We do professional development. We offer mentorship programs and leadership programs. Our current 2022 leadership program is underway at the moment, with our second round of mentorship programs coming later on in the year. And we also offer corporate memberships and consulting around sort of diversity and inclusion for corporate members. So if you are here today, you'll most likely have found us through a newsletter, through word of mouth or on LinkedIn. And we send out sort of monthly communications around the events that we have coming up and other programs for you guys to get involved in. So we'd love to see you at a future event as well. So myself, I am the founder of We Rise In, and I'll be hosting today's discussion. I'm a chartered surveyor by background, so I work in the real estate profession, but I've always had a passion for diversity and inclusion and supporting those from sort of minority ethnic backgrounds within the corporate space. So the panel discussion element, there'll be a quick intro to the various speakers, and then we'll launch into a sort of 20 to 25 minute chat around, we'll be looking at essentially an in plan versus an out plan. There'll be many of you on the call here who are maybe looking to get a new role in a new job elsewhere. Maybe you're looking to completely change sectors. So the out plan portion of the discussion will be kind of aimed at you, and for those who are in an organization and looking to level up and move to that next level of your career, we'll be looking at some in-plan style questions as well. And then we'll open up the floor to Q&As at the end of the discussion. So in terms of our speakers, we have Quaye Hammond, who has a background from commercial real estate companies to non-profit organization. Quaye's professional experience and interests have spanned talent management, early career development, learning and development, and diversity and inclusion. We also have Cherise. Cherise is a recruitment manager at Montagu, and she has 8 years worth of experience in managing recruitment processes within property, travel, and hospitality sectors. We then also have Kieran, who's a legal recruitment consultant and founder of Gradvantage Partners. And so he's got experience in legal, finance, tech as well. And he's got a demonstrated history of excellence in the industry. Then we've got Stella Jackson. She's head of recruitment at a London-based real estate developer, Anvil. She has over 10 years experience managing and overseeing recruitment processes, implementing selection assessment processes, and many various change improvements through the organisations that she's worked in. And finally, we have Joel. He's a headhunter and a real estate recruitment specialist with over 15 years experience. Doesn't look like it, but he's over 15 years experience in talent acquisition and recruitment services. So I will stop sharing my screen now and we'll kind of launch into the Q&A portion of the event. So I will begin by, we'll be launching into the in plan. So looking at questions around how one can develop themselves internally in their organizations. So my first question, and I'm going to aim this at Quaye, because you're a talent development specialist. In terms of when one qualifies, whether you're in real estate, whether you're in legal, once you're qualified, what can an individual do to distinguish themselves within their organization with a view to being promoted up relatively quickly?
Yeah, I think the first thing for me would be to be proactive. So understand what is needed to progress from the start and have that conversation with your manager to say, look, in the future, I'm going to be interested in the promotion. What exactly do I need to do to get there? And I know different companies may measure your impact or your performance in different ways. So definitely understand how your performance and how your impact is going to be measured. So at Microsoft, that's the impact that you make individually, how you leverage impact of others, and how you build on the impact of others. Whereas when I've worked at Colliers, when they're looking at performance, it's how your performance is linked to the values. So how are you doing what's right? How are you being enterprising? So once you understand how your performance is going to be measured and you're proactive, then you know what steps to take. And on that point, I think definitely, partner with your manager to understand, what do I need to do? Are you going to support me? And then also be accountable for your own career and drive your career. But that partnership is definitely important. And then the last thing I would say is to get yourself on projects that will broaden your experience. I think when thinking about being employable and both internally and externally, it's the experiences that you've gained working maybe on different projects. So definitely be proactive, establish that partnership with your manager and gain a broad amount of experiences.
Stella, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, Quaye's pretty much touched on everything. Like, I think the partnership with your manager is definitely really key. I think outside of kind of having that partnership with your manager is also like, what extracurricular activities are you getting involved in within the business? There's a variety of different like events that you could get involved with and kind of put your foot forward. Secondly, I think as well, it's all about networking. We talk about networking so much before we get into the workspace, but it's also really important in the workspace. There's various different kind of stakeholders you can sit down with, who can give you like a lot of really good advice in regards to enhancing your skill set, as well as speaking to people in the position that you are in at the moment and trying to understand what you're lacking. So I think it's a variety of different things, but definitely starts with your manager, having that open conversation, knowing what you're missing, and then be willing to kind of work on those areas as well.
Kieran, did you have anything to add, or maybe a different perspective?
Yeah, thank you. I do. I think being on the agency recruitment side, you often we're often having conversations with people that want to leave because they don't understand how to really leverage their position and build a platform for themselves, especially Black professionals, where they'll be the minorities and they will often feel marginalized where they are and won't be able to, and won't really fit in. There's a few different ways, to be honest. I'm not really somebody who adheres to the norms. So I think in this day and age, when you think about social media, there's an example of a former lawyer, Alex Su, who left the profession and went into legal tech to become a salesperson. And he was doing sales, but still doing legal and consulting at the same time. Really wanted to build up and become a managing director within this legal tech space, just because he was on track to be a partner in law, but he just was really struggling to do both. And he managed to leverage social media, which is, it's a bit of a unicorn, to build a massive following, which has created a sales funnel for him, so he's got a lot of leads now. So he doesn't really have to do much in terms of picking up the phone, cold calling. Now he's managed to be innovative, to use a different way to get leads. And now his profile is such that nobody can ignore it. It doesn't really matter how hard he works, whether it is to the values, he's bringing in money. And what I do find a lot of the time, especially following a few different financial crises, is that the value you add financially to the bottom line, to the P&L, no matter which the values, no matter the stakeholders, no matter who's championing you, that really is the bottom line in terms of how quickly can you accelerate. And in law, there's two particular partners I know that made partner by 30, which is extremely quick. And their secret was, as Nee said, getting on projects, getting on great projects, but then influencing the clients, building relationships with those clients so that the clients felt that they were invaluable, so that the partners really couldn't ignore them again in terms of the value they added intrinsically, but also in terms of now the value financially of this client is tied to this employee. So we really can't ignore them and we need to promote them. Otherwise they'll leave and go to another law firm and take the client with them. So as much as the values and, you know, having stakeholders championing you, which is necessary, it really, what I find still comes down to money and how you can directly or indirectly link your actions to bringing in business for the firm.
And so each of you touched on, you know, getting in front of your line managers and having that conversation with them early to make sure that, you know, they know that your aspirations is to be, you know, promoted within 12 to 18 months. But how does one actually go about advocating for themselves, or maybe putting a business case forward for their for sort of that professional development opportunity? Is it a case of, you know, just let your hard work speak for itself, which I don't know about most people in the school, but I found that never is the case. You kind of have to put your best foot forward and be a bit more vocal. So how does one do that without coming across, I don't know, too forward, but just forward enough that, you know, you get your kind of opinion or aspirations heard? I'm going to direct that at Quaye first.
Yeah, I think Stella and both Kieran touched on it, and it's about, so one, Kieran used the example of the social media, you know, to gain his clients, and Stella spoke about doing something that's kind of out of your business as usual, out of your extra curriculum. I think when you do things like that, you do become invaluable to the business because they understand that you are driving impact, not just in your day-to-day job, but outside of that. So of course, someone who is talented and is impactful, the business doesn't want to lose you. So if you want to continue to develop your skills and maybe go on a development program, you can use all of those extra projects that you're working on to drive impact, to say, okay, look, I want to continue to develop in myself and increase my performance. This is what I'm doing. Can you continue to invest in me? And I think, again, linking back to having that partnership with your manager, that will help you get on those opportunities. But yeah, of course, it's not easy to get on those development programs. But I do think if you have that kind of extra thing that you're doing in the background, it makes it very difficult for people to not want to invest in you. And I also think there's nothing wrong as well to highlight to someone who might be your senior stakeholder who has that approval to say, you know what, this is a skill that an experience that I need in order to develop in my career. I'm not getting it in this situation or this context. I need to go on said program in order to develop this. And if you have that partnership and you have that sponsor, hopefully that should be something that could help as well.
But ultimately, it comes down to money, right? You know, if you could be the most amazing, you know, performer, but if the business doesn't have the budget for it, you know, how do you kind of make them get the budget? Like, what is there a way you can make them, or is it, you know, you just kind of have to hope for the next round?
Yeah, no, I think a good question. So, you know, sometimes it is about, there's only a certain amount of people who can go on said program. I think that potentially there are other ways. So there's free training that you can do, LinkedIn Learning, if your company has it, but also something that you could ask your businesses for them to kind of utilize the apprenticeship levy. There's a lot of trainings and development programs that, if you utilize the apprenticeship levy, might not cost the business as much as if you were just to do it outright, and then having that knowledge to say, okay, can I do it this way? That is potentially an option as well. But I think linking back to being proactive, once, if you've said, this is my goals, this is how I want to progress, the business is aware. It's not an instant cost that needs to come out tomorrow. If you said, okay, this is a conversation we've had, potentially that's something that could be costed for the next year.
Okay, cool. Stella, as head of HR within a firm, is there, have you ever seen a case where, you know, there wasn't budget, let's say, but then someone sort of advocated enough, well enough for themselves that, you know, you felt as a business it was prudent to get them onto that program or to develop them, and if you have had a case like that, what was it that stood out about that particular individual group of individuals that kind of made the business see the need to develop them further?
Yeah, sure. So we usually have like a budget per person. So we're a small, medium-sized organization. Our headcount's around 200 individuals. So we try and have like a 2K budget per person, but we're also really big on learning and development. So there's quite a few scenarios. I can talk about myself for once. For starters, so when I started with the business, I was a recruitment business partner, and I knew that I wanted to get involved in more organizational design and restructure. And I kind of put my case forward initially to my manager that I think it's beneficial for me to do the CIPD course because of X, Y, Z. And at the time, resourcing wasn't important to them. They just wanted to get bums on seats. You had so many projects on the table. So I kind of just went away and did a bit of a cost exercise to explain that if you pay for me to do X and Y, this is the value that it's going to have on the business long term. And these are the amount of savings that we're actually going to make. And I kind of worked with someone in finance who was a friend at a time who kind of helped me figure out like an Excel spreadsheet, because I wasn't really good with numbers at the time, but I knew that the money's going to speak at the end of the day. So we kind of put the cost savings in there. I kind of worked out a recharge rate per person and kind of explain that if we don't focus on developing our employees, this is the amount of money that we're going to lose long term in terms of consistently trying to recruit for them. So it did take about, I think, a year for them to say, okay, no worries, go ahead, see how you get on first of all, and then depending on how it goes, we'll then invest in you. And then from the back of that, I was able to get them to pay for 2 of my qualifications. But there's also quite a few like trainees within the business at the moment who we actually take on board just to kind of see how they got on for the first kind of 12 to 18 months. And depending on the work that they're putting in, depending on like, it's not just about hitting your goals, it's about the curiosity. Are you willing to learn? Are you willing? Are you coachable? Have you got a learning mindset? Because 9 out of 10 times people start a course and then they don't finish it. And then the company's already paid for that course and they can't actually get their money back. So it's one thing to pay for a qualification for an individual, but it's a second thing to see them utilize it and actually use it. So we do kind of like a lot of our trainees, we do test them in the first year. We kind of throw them in the deep end to see, do they really want this? Are they really hungry for it? And from there, we'll then sponsor them. We'll put them on day release, and we've got a lot of people in like trainee surveyors and site managers on day releases, and then there'll be certain people that will put through various different programs within the business, so internal programs that will help support them. But one of the things that I wanted to say was like, you are your best advocate, if that makes sense. Like if you don't speak, and like, so for example, if you speak and you get shut down the first time and you don't say anything else, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. You got to kind of keep going and keep putting yourself out there. Like if like at the end of the day, we're competing with multiple people on a given day. So you need to kind of keep putting yourself out there. And if it doesn't work in that organization, it might work elsewhere. But I would say keep going for it, keep mentioning it 2-3 times. And then if you've reached a dead end and you're like, do you know what, I've said it so many times, there's nowhere else for me to go, then look at going somewhere else. But I feel like if you don't say it and you don't push your case forward, it's the saying, like, if you don't ask, you don't get kind of thing. So keep asking until you get what you need, and like be determined with it as well.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just stick with you on this one. Once someone's on that professional development program, they've advocated for themselves, they've got on board, whether it's internal or externally provided, what can that individual do to ensure that there is a roadmap after that training, with their employer, to ensure that it leads to a promotion or even further development opportunities?
Yeah, so this kind of leads back to what Quaye touched on earlier in regards to that partnership with your manager, because at the end of the day, it's your manager that's going to put your case forward in terms of progression. It's just how it works. Like It's not like a random person can put you forward for that. So while you're going through those training courses, you know, make the use of your one-to-ones. Like most people have one-to-ones on a weekly basis or bi-weekly. Make the use of your appraisals that you have on a quarterly or biannual basis, and tell your manager, look, this is what I'm doing right now, and this is where I see myself going. These are the weaknesses and areas that I'm developing on so that I can get to X, Y, Z. What is the timeline for me to get to here? And what else do I need? Because if you're not having those conversations and you're doing the course on its own in silo, then you're unlikely to kind of get that progression. Whereas if you're having the conversation with your manager and letting them know, well, this is where I've got to with X, and this is where I am with Y. I think I need further development with X, Y, Z to get to here. They're the ones that's going to support you. They'll put you in touch with the right people. They might even put you on further training and further development courses to get you to that next level. So that partnership piece is still really important, even though you're doing your own learning and development on the side. And who knows, they might even be able to help you. Like one of the papers that I did as part of my course, I submitted it to the business and just said, look, I did my synopsis on XYZ, have a read through and see if it will have an impact or if there's anything that you'd like to take away from this. And they actually forwarded it on to the MD. So if you're not having those conversations with people, you never know who's going to advocate for you. So I know it's a bit frustrating because we're like, but I'm always trying to speak to people. I'm always trying to kind of get my foot forward. But at the same time, sometimes you don't see results straight away. It might take an extra 2 to 3 months. It doesn't mean that the work you've done quite early on is not going to help you in the long run, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's a really detailed answer. Thank you. I was just wondering if Kieran, if you had anything to add on that from maybe, you know, coming from your legal background perspective, is it similar in terms of, you know, professional development programs, and how can an individual who's looking to, you know, progress to associate, senior associate, partner, how can they kind of make use of sort of professional development programs with either within their business or externally?
Yeah, Stella, what Stella said was very comprehensive, to be honest. I think that every single one of those steps is necessary, and I'd agree wholeheartedly. In terms of law, do you know what, to be fair, even though I'm a legal recruitment consultant, obviously I've had experience for a wide variety of sectors and types of organizations, you know, from startups to the corporates. And it really does differ. It really does depend on the culture of the company, you know, the headcount, the size of the businesses, depending on, as Stella said, how patient you may need to be, how many times you may need to bang on the table, bang on the door, how many people you may need to champion you. There are, on occasion, especially within the law, you know, such a high pressure, such a fast-paced environment, you know, you putting together a document, a synopsis, managers may not have time or be engaged enough to even read it, you know, especially if they're not already bought into you, which is probably an issue, which is why you're having to flag to them that, you know, I'm doing well, I need professional development. So it is vitally important to get champions around the business, especially in law. I have a lot of friends who are on programs where they're promoting, you know, Black students getting into their firms in the pipeline from school up to lateral hires. And when they put themselves on those boards and those positions, they'll be joined by partners, they'll be joined by the chairmen of the business. So then, even though they have a line manager who, for one, may not be a great manager, may still be in the learning process themselves, if they are not themselves good at managing up, then having access to higher ups above them, it gives them direct access to really speak about the business, understand it, and use nepotism. In all honesty, it really does work. As much as we like to not look beyond, you know, the LinkedIn facade, nepotism really does work in a lot of organizations, no matter how big they are. There are so many silos, and that's where a lot of the frustrations there comes from, especially within the Black community, where we're not able to make as many connections as deeply, you know, because we may not go out and socialize as much or go out to drinks or just connect in the ways that we feel we naturally do with our community. So you have to go above and beyond. So getting access, going on to schemes like that, and just making as many genuine relationships so you can influence and persuade people, and have other people doing it for you. If you can build a buzz at your company without you having to even say, I want professional development, that's the best way about going. That's the best way about going about it, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. No, that was honestly really comprehensive answers. I'm scribbling some notes and talking points here that I'll kind of wrap up towards the end of the discussion. But that kind of brings us quite nicely to the end of our kind of in-plan discussion on the panel. And I was going to kind of move on to talking about the out-plan. So we've spoken a lot about building that business case for yourself, building your profile in the business, getting on those professional development programs, making sure that you are aligning the program that you're on with your appraisals and reviews. But let's say you get to the end of that, and or you don't even get to that point, and your company isn't investing in your professional development, and so now you're thinking, I'm not being promoted, I've been stuck here, in this particular level, middle level for 2-3 years plus, I'm now thinking of leaving. So in the event that one is thinking of leaving, what steps should one be taking to kind of, I don't know, raise their profile externally, as it were, to put themselves in the best possible position for other job roles? And I'm going to direct that question at Joel, if I may.
Very good question. Good evening, everyone. I think for me, as a headhunter and a recruiter, I come across this scenario on a regular basis. And, so many times on so many occasions, I have a dialogue with a candidate who says that they're looking to leave. The opportunity to develop hasn't been presented to them. There's something which we coin as a glass ceiling, where they know what the next step looks like and how to get there, but it's just not being presented to them. And my first question is always, have you had a conversation with your manager? And it's quite a good question, purely because with regards to promotion, with regards to putting the best foot forward, or putting yourself in the best possible position so that if you are leaving or thinking of leaving, you give yourself the best opportunity to progress within your career. I always speak to candidates and always refer to a book. It's a really interesting book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And the reason why I recommend that book is purely because that should be a question that all job seekers and candidates should be asking themselves. Why do I want the promotion? Why do I feel I'm the best person for the role? Why do I believe I'm not being, presented the opportunity? And it's more of like an internal critical analysis. And, there's no right or wrong answers, but you have to ask yourself those questions. To kind of hone back and go back to the question again, it starts with dialogue with your line manager. But prior to that dialogue, you have to have that conviction that you are the right person for the promotion, you are the right person for the role. On so many occasions, people, they initiate that dialogue because someone's been promoted who they started with on day one. But do you actually have that self-belief that if you're in that role, you can actually execute and do what's required of the business? So it starts with the conviction. I always tell people to believe in themselves, believe in their capability, and then just present a business plan as to how they're going to execute that. But it starts with you doing a critical analysis of yourself. But yes, I always say, look, have that conversation with your line manager or director. Find out what the reason is. It might be budget restraints. It might be because they haven't seen that talent or gift in you. But whatever the result is of that conversation, it will give you a clear understanding of what you need to go away and do or prove, or where you are within the business and whether they believe that they're going to carry you to the next level or not. And just to follow that up, I would always say, off the back of whatever conversation you have with a line manager, follow it up with an email, make sure it's documented. It's not just to help you, it helps them as well. It gives you a clear, measured time frame of when that conversation took place. If any promises were made or any time frames were discussed, you can then go back to that email and say, look, in 3 months, you said we'll have another sit down, or 6 months or 12 months. We're here now. This is what I brought in. This is what I've done. These are the cost savings I've made to the business. This is the revenue I've brought in. What can we do about that? So but it all starts with conviction. You can't have that conversation if you don't have that self-belief, if you don't believe in yourself. And then by establishing that conviction, you need to ask yourself why. What's the real reason why I want a promotion? What's the real reason why I want to stay with this company? Why? So yeah, I think that would summarize my account.
Perfect. Cherise, I was going to move on to you next, but maybe Joel's provided a really comprehensive answer there as well. But did you have anything to add, any thoughts on how, what you should do maybe just before leaving to try and see if there are still opportunities in your current organisation?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So yeah, I believe, just agree with like what the panelists are saying, that, seek out the internal opportunities before you actually think and make that decision to start looking for opportunities outside of your organization. I think you also have to bear in mind that, you might not necessarily move for a promotion in another company. You might be taking a sidestep. So you have to bear in mind that actually you're starting again. You're starting to build your brand again and who you are within a new company, with a new line manager and a new team. So, you all the groundwork that you've put in your current company to get where you are will you're gonna have to start again, because unless, you have, a big social media following, or you have a name within your industry, a lot of people may not know you. But if you do make that decision to move, I think you really need to look at your skills and like what Joel says, is do that critical analysis of yourself and what it is you're lacking and what you want to develop on. But also look at the skills that you do have and that you excel at, and look at what's transferable. And really do your research into companies and organizations that align to your skill set, but your values. And I think there's so much information about companies out there now that we didn't have access to a long time ago. You can look on LinkedIn and you can see every person in that company and what their jobs are, and what, you can even get a true reflection of your team before you even join that company. So yeah, do your research. Glassdoor is a great tool for having a look at what current employees are saying about that business. You could use other platforms. You could use Instagram if that company has a social media account as well, which will give you good insight into what, a social aspect within that business looks like. If you're going through a recruitment process and you're going to those interviews, really drill down on what access you will have to development opportunities in that business, and make sure that you're moving to an organization where you feel that you would get that promotion, or you might even get that promotion when you join, like as in you might step up into a new role. And yeah, just building your profile as well. I think like in an external way, so via LinkedIn, I think it's really important to have a really comprehensive profile, so that when you are putting yourself out there, recruiters can find you, and recruiters know exactly what it is you do and what you're good at. So really use all the features that are out there to be able to sell yourself.
Perfect, thank you. I'm just encouraging people to start kind of popping your questions, because we'll be wrapping up the panel discussion in about 5 minutes. So if you have any questions, either on the in plan, the out plan, whatever it might be, do pop it in the chat. Thank you for that, Cherise. I was going to ask the next question to Kieran, and then actually open it up to either Cherise, Joel, or anyone else on the panel. In terms of kind of applying for the process of applying for jobs, I don't know about the people in the audience, but I recently, it's almost now 2 years ago, left my kind of first employer from my first employer after I left university. I was there for 5 years. And then when it came to I'd kind of reached that proverbial glass ceiling. And in terms of kind of moving, there was, there was pretty much zero to no literature, because when you're at university, there's a lot of graduate schemes and graduate programs. It's a process to kind of get in, but then once you're qualified and in the market, as it were, you're getting recruiters hounding you on LinkedIn, but you don't really understand what is the actual process of moving. How does one kind of dust their CV off? Is it as simple as submitting your CV, or what's the interview process? So I'd like to ask Kieran, what's the process of applying for jobs at that kind of mid to senior level, and are there any kind of platforms that people can use to kind of upskill themselves before making that move?
First things first, in terms of applying, the best case scenario is that you don't even apply for a job. And what I mean by that is sort of tied to what Cherise said in terms of LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn now, especially since the pandemic, everyone's on there, everyone's really taking value, everybody's paying attention. We're all working from home at a desk looking at this screen. If you have a platform, if you have a profile, whether you're active or not, you need to look attractive to recruiters, but also to direct hiring managers who are utilizing LinkedIn a hell of a lot more now as well, and not relying on on recruiters to do it. The way to get a job without applying is by being quite bold and brave. You can create your LinkedIn profile and just wait to get hounded by recruiters. That's the easiest way. You know, connect to a couple of them. If they're good, they'll get you a job like that. If not, you know, you'll go through that process of finding out, you know, the good and bad from the good, the bad and the ugly in terms of recruitment. However, my ideal way is reaching out. So being bold and reaching out to people at the organizations you're interested in. You may not have a clue how different organizations, how competitors differentiate from where you are. You're not expected to. Reach out to people there, reach out to people at different levels. So I usually recommend for lawyers to reach out to trainees to see what the experience has been like and how they're treated at their level, to reach out to associates, senior associates, and especially partners. And even time to try and reach out to colleagues in different areas in non-legal sides of the business so that they can, one, start building a buzz if they do want to go to that company of people that can testify to having positive experiences, if they've come across really well, enthusiastic, ask good questions, been engaging, but just so they can make an educated decision. And all this could be happening. Once this happens, someone can be like, you know what, let me refer you. You know, I've had a really good experience. You seem like you really bought into what we're doing. Let me refer you. And that's the best and easiest way, and one that will give is the highest probability of you being successful, because you've already gotten initially past first or second stage interview informally without actually clicking on LinkedIn and to apply or going for a recruiter. And that's really just works best, and it gives confidence to those who are hiring you, because it shows that you already fit into a certain degree, you are proactive, you are tenacious, but also to yourself in that I feel comfortable on day one sitting down with these people because I've already had a positive experience. I know a few of them already. I say to a lot of my junior lawyers, you know, if you go into an interview and one of the interviewers has to excuse themselves because they already have a relationship with you, that's a win. Do you know what I mean? And that happens a lot. So being very, very bold in not applying, but reaching out and building a community and doing your own due diligence. And that in turn will usually result in you being referred or you being asked to apply to a role. So that's what I would say.
Oh, thank you. If, for those here, I'm making notes and I've got loads of extra questions that are coming into my head. That's why I'm like looking down and scribbling away. But yeah, that's really, really good answer in terms of kind of that job hunting process. Joel, I'd like to hear from you because obviously you are a headhunter, as it were. So correct me if I'm wrong, I assume you're the one person in people's DMs on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so
scoping people out. So what are you looking for in terms of, you know, candidates, and what makes you approach a candidate over kind of waiting to kind of, I don't know.
To be honest,
waiting a candidate.
No, to be honest, my approach with regards to headhunting is slightly different in the sense of I don't use LinkedIn as a hunting ground. For me, it's more of a reference point. So I have my ways in obtaining the contacts and speaking to potential candidates. But just to echo the sentiments of Kieran, there's nothing more powerful than a recommendation. Whenever I get a candidate recommended to me by either an industry professional or peer or someone that I know, I literally stop whatever I'm doing and focus on that person, because it's all about credibility. And it's going to sound quite cheesy and somewhat inappropriate, but don't worry, it's nothing to worry about. You got to think of a love interest. If you're on the dating field, for those that are single, you know, in this meeting, would you rather have a recommendation from a friend or a colleague of a potential love interest, or just check someone's profile out online? So for me, the power of referrals, recommendations, it's intangible. And it's purely because it cuts out all the nitty-gritty, it cuts out the processes, because believe it or not, recruitment and headhunting is a very process-driven field. So, you know, we go through the screening process, the pre-screening over the phone, we meet them, we do the reference checks, you know, we go through mock interviews with them. So if I've got a colleague or someone that I've worked with, or even a client that says, if you can find me Kieran Paul's CV, I'll offer him tomorrow. You know, I don't have to do that anymore, because I've got a recommendation to go after someone. who is so credible and has so much kind of integrity in the marketplace. So yeah, just to echo Kieran's sentiments, recommendations, referrals, and it all comes down to relationship building. So, you know, you don't always have to go on LinkedIn and think, who's hiring, what job can I apply for? Sometimes just add people and have conversations. Don't be scared to connect with someone on LinkedIn and say, do you know what, I'm a grad, or, you know, I'm at the crossroads in my career. You know, do you have any kind of tips you can offer me? Have those conversations, because 9 times out of 10, because of that boldness and that proactiveness, that contact's going to remember you and say, do you know what? Someone got in contact with me last week and, you know, they were really proactive, had a great demeanor. I think I've got a job for them. So relationship building, you know, starting conversations on LinkedIn, so much more powerful than just having open to work. By all means, have open to work on your profile. I'm not disputing that, but it's the kind of starting conversations, you know, initiating conversations online, and obviously recommendations, which are so much more powerful in my field.
Does that open to work actually work? Does
it gets you a lot of views on your profile.
Pardon?
You get a lot of views on your profile, but I don't think it's been measured yet or tested in comparison. So,
all right. Well, you got to try every angle, I guess.
Why not?
Next question is the protocol or the etiquette around when you are looking for that new role, discussing, you know, salary or negotiating your contract. I know from my perspective, I just did a lot of Googling and YouTubing to kind of try and get myself to a position where I felt confident enough to have those conversations. And from a personal perspective, the last employer that I was at, the team that I was at, I'd kind of gotten to a place where I'd kind of lost confidence in myself, and there was a part of me that had that kind of imposter syndrome in my head, like, you know, can I actually be going for these roles? And the role that I was going for was in not a completely different field, still real estate, but something but I was going from consultancy to client side. So I had to do a lot of building myself up. But when it came to kind of, you know, disclosing your salary, like, are there, I don't know if I should be asking you guys these questions, or if you'll be completely honest, but how does one go about, you know, pitching themselves to ensure that, you know, you're not being undervalued, but at the same time, you know, you're getting yourself that step up, not only in title, but hopefully in salary as well. I was gonna, any takers?
I'll start, Faye. So I think for me, I think when you get to that mid to senior level within your career, you really, really have to get comfortable about talking about salary and money. I think it's not a conversation that you should shy away from. I think you have to be confident in the value that you're bringing to the organization and know your worth, but also know the worth of the job that you're doing. Because sometimes actually you might take a step up into a role that, you know, that role warrants a lot more pay than maybe where you're at the moment. So, you know, you don't want to just get, you know, 2 to 5% salary increase. You might want to push yourself to get a 10% salary increase. So know your value. Draw on really like specific and recent experiences when you're going into those conversations about salary with your manager or your department leader or whoever it is, and use those recent experiences to sort of to you know, build a case around why you think you deserve that salary increase. I also think it's important to understand the benchmark of where you're at now. And like you said, you know, you went on Google and YouTube. There's salary surveys that you can look at, that you can access. There's salary benchmarking out there that you can access. So you need to know when you're looking at what you're on at the moment, is that relative to the industry? Is that relative to the sector that you're in? You know, use that as a sort of as an initial guide. And, you know, using that data and then, you know, you doing that analysis of where you are will also help back up those conversations that you're having with your manager when it comes to salary. But I do think you need to be really confident in your pitch as well. Know your stats and be very clear with what it is that you're asking for. And as Stella says, that you know, sometimes you just have to ask for these things, and you have to, you know, be able to be confident about what that figure is in your head and what you're trying to achieve. And I think, you know, when it comes to retention, more often than not, companies are prepared to listen to you, you know, rather than just saying no. And it does take a bit of time. You know, you might not get the answer in that first meeting that you have. It might take 2, 3, 4 meetings before you actually get what it is that you want. But yeah, I think you need to be very specific, be confident, and come with data as well.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great answer. And I was just going to add, this is me keeping it 100% real here. For anyone that is doing, multiple job applications and you're speaking to multiple recruiters, keep a schedule, because what you tell one person in terms of salary expectations might be different from another, and you don't want to get those mixed up. Because there are some roles, particularly if you're looking at both public and private sector, it might be the same role, but the salary banding might be slightly different. And sometimes it comes down to a case of, okay, would you rather just have a job, even if it isn't at your salary expectation, but just get your foot in there? So just keep those schedules and know who you've spoken to and know what you've said, because you don't want to be making those mistakes. Joel, did you have anything to add? Actually, no, I'll go to Kieran, because I know you train and you coach professionals, and particularly legal professionals, looking to kind of make that next step up. So do you have any advice for those who are kind of looking to make that next level up, on how to kind of discuss salaries or negotiating their contracts when going into a new business?
Yeah, for sure. If you're using a recruiter, then we usually will probably understand. As Cherise said, we are probably like human. We'll know the human catalogs of the benchmarks, so we'll be able to say, this is where you're at. You've been underpaid by this much. Let's get you out of there. Or we'll consult on how to negotiate for if you're looking for a really ambitious pay increase. And for the most part, recruiters may encourage you. Some of them will discourage you, because for them it's easier for you to get a smaller pay increase or just go sideways, and they can get their commission and move on. Other recruiters like me, some of the good guys, would encourage you to go for what you want and be ambitious, but be very realistic in terms of the feedback you're going to get from the industry isn't going to be all love. Some hiring managers are going to say absolutely not. Why? How can you justify that? But others, especially in high growth businesses, they may be more open to understanding the results you've gotten in a different context, but using the same skills. But at the same time, transparency must be key. Salary transparency. If it's not key in the workplace, you don't want to be there, because it's going to become an issue. You're going to find out people getting paid more than you. People will find out they're getting paid less than you, and you just don't want that. So if transparency isn't key, what else isn't transparent in terms of the way that the team and the organization communicate? So you should feel wholeheartedly like you've got a right to disclose it, to discuss it, to ask what the rest of the team are getting, especially lawyers. I placed a lot of newly qualified solicitors, and they usually go from smaller firms, say getting around in the Midlands, say around 40K. And so I moved someone from 40K to 95K in London, and they never imagined they could do that. And that's the norm, I told them when they go into the interview, ask what the other candidates at their level are running the team, because just because you've come from a different office or a smaller team or a firm that's not as heavy hitting, it's about you. And if you back yourself and if you're confident, if they want you, they'll put you on par with what the rest of the team has. So it's a bold move to make. And honestly, it will mean that you don't have as big a choice sometimes. Certain hiring managers in their ego, who are just stuck in their old ways, will only want to give you a certain percentage increase. Maybe even because they only got a certain, they only get a certain percentage increase. So why would they go out to bat for you? But just be bold. Just be bold. If you know your worth, you know your value, if you know what you want in terms of life you want to live, what's going to take for you to go to Dubai and get the Instagram pics, then go ahead. Just do what you want, because you need to be happy at your desk.
Yeah. First of all, I might need to be changing careers. 40 to 95K. Whoa. But yeah, no, that person must have backed themselves, and sure enough, they were able to then, prove it afterwards. I think the worst thing is to kind of lie, and then, because there is a certain element of, if you are going for that kind of higher bracket, once you get in, you can start to kind of put so much pressure on yourself to be performing at that level. So you have to be considerate to yourself as to, okay, what will you feel comfortable, what level do you feel comfortable from a financial perspective, but also from a delivery perspective. So yeah, no, I think that was really, really good points you've made. Do you have, and this is a question for everyone, is there any data around, or that you see as, recruitment specialists around pay when it comes to ethnicity, in terms of Black professionals? Are the jobs that you're kind of placing people in, is it kind of race agnostic, and you know, you're given like a job spec and this is what they want and this is how much they're willing to pay? Have you ever come across instances where they then kind of renegotiate the salary based on, you know, when they then, you know, meet the candidate, etc.?
I haven't been in a situation where we renegotiate based on them meeting the candidate, but I am fully aware of the fact that unfortunately people from ethnic and minority backgrounds are paid less than other individuals, which is completely unfair. One of the things that we committed to, so we work in partnership with the GLA, and we obviously build a lot of homes around London. And one of the things that we committed to is that we were going to ensure that our shortlist and the people that we hire in the business are reflective of the diversity within London. And then we also committed to the London living allowance as minimum for our trainees as well. So everyone is coming in on a fair rate. There isn't as much data out there as well. And I think this is the issue as well, is that companies are not willing to be as transparent and as open in regards to these conversations. But luckily you can find some data out there, but it's not a lot. Would I say that my organization is perfect? No. I think one of the positive things of having someone like me within the company is that I can keep pushing for it and just making sure that there is no discrimination within our process and ensuring that people are coming in on a fair whack. But it differs from countries, from organization to organization. One company who I think do quite well on it is IBM, because when I was there, you know, they had quite a lot, there's a lot of transparency. You see a lot of senior leaders who look like you in those positions. But yeah, it's one of those things that I think we keep needing to have conversations about. How we change it, I don't know, but I feel like we need more leaders in those type of positions to kind of change that. But I don't know if anyone else thinks otherwise, or have had any other experiences.
So I don't have, or I haven't experienced specific data with regards to the salary differences with regards to minorities and our counterparts. But I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with a market leading employment website, so a job board basically. And they have a new software which runs reports, which is able to track the ethnicity or the demographics of its applicants. And with the data, what they were able to establish is that ethnic minorities click outside of an application 5 times more than their counterpart before they hit apply for a job. So during this conversation I had with the individual, we both agreed that obviously what ethnic minorities are usually doing when they go to apply for a role is they click on the company website, they then click on LinkedIn to see how many people are similar to the way they look. They may then click on other websites, you know, click on a Glass, I think is it Glassdoor that gives the reviews? Yeah. So they're clicking on multiple sites. So this company have data which it can track the demographics of the applicant, show how many clicks outside of the actual application they've made prior to completing the application. And it does this by monitoring the lag times from when you click start application to the actual cases and the other sites you've gone on before you complete the application. So there is data out there, but it's not specifically towards salaries. And these conversations that I'm having with this particular individual and the large brand, who they are just open conversations which I want to use to kind of educate the clients that I work with, educate the companies that I'm speaking to, just to let them know, look, this is the situation, you know, we're not being beaten to the chase for these roles. You know, a lot of ethnic minorities are concerned that they won't have people within the business that, you know, resemble or look like them, or there won't be people from a similar background to them. So because of that, there's a lot more of a hesitance to apply for roles. So these are part of conversations which I'm hoping I can have a lot more in future. So yeah.
Now that is really interesting. And as you say it, you know, it comes to my mind about, I've had mentees in the past who you know, have joined organizations because they saw my profile within that business, and some of the networks that I'd set up in previous businesses. So it is so important. That representation point is key. It's the whole reason why, you know, I set up We Rise In, was to get that representation at those senior levels. And I know there are a few employers on the call here, so hopefully they're taking note, and, you know, you can reach out to Joel or anyone of the panel afterwards to have further conversations, whether you're employer, employee, or even you know, future, you know, business owner, because I know there are some people in here who are maybe looking to do the out plan, but the out plan into their own business, which I was going to sneakily add in another question around, if someone is looking to move out, looking to maybe set up on their own, you know, be a bit more entrepreneurial. We are kind of that generation, you know, the millennial generation, where people are, you know, doing side hustles as well as their main hustles. Joel, I'll start with you. How can one kind of set themselves up in such a way that, you know, they're not completely losing all their income, maybe going into contracting? Is there a way that you can kind of do a bit of both, whether it's part-time or contracting, to then build your business up and then go full-time into your own business?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I've done it. I've been in a situation where I've taken a leap of faith, you know, for 2 years. It didn't quite work out, went back into working for a company. So I've been on that journey. The advice that I give to people who ask me that question is the 1 foot in, 1 foot out scenario, where you've got a steady income which covers your daily or monthly necessities whilst you build your personal brand. You build your personal brand, obviously, you know, through LinkedIn, by showcasing the results of what you can do, what you've done. You know, you add, you know, information, stats in your bio about, you know, what you've done, about your experiences, whilst maintaining a steady income. And for me, when I have the conversation with people, advise them, I always tell them that it's about mitigating risk. And part of mitigating risk is the knowledge and understanding that, look, it's not going to be a smooth ride. It's going to be a bumpy ride. When you set up by yourself, it feels good. You know, you kind of wake up late in the morning, go and get a coffee at the coffee shop. You know, you feel like a boss and entrepreneur. But, you know, the first 6 months of running your own business can be a roller coaster. So it's kind of like, I guess, conditioning your mind to understand that it's not going to be a smooth ride. You know, preparation for that journey may be having maybe 6 months, you know, income put aside, or 3 months income put aside for the journey. But it's always a case of me just, you know, reiterating to people that, look, it's going to be tough. It's not a bad decision. It's never a bad choice, but no one says it's going to be easy. Just so mentally prepare your mind that, look, you're going to have some days where you want to quit, you want to give up, you know, your back's against the wall, but it's all part of the process. So yeah, that's the advice I usually give people. Nothing too glamorous, but just kind of in your face. It's going to be tough. Stick it through, sort of thing.
Oh, thank you. No, it's good to keep it real. We want to keep it real here for sure. And final question to the panel. I have to apologize to everyone on the call. I said it would be 20-25 minutes, but the conversation was so good that we've overran. So I'll ask this final question to the panel, and then I'll open the floor to maybe a couple of questions, and then we'll quickly wrap up. I don't want to take too much of either the panel's or the audience's time this evening. So the final question is, if someone's out plan involves sort of change in sector or industry or career, are there ways to try and reduce the amount of salary cut you'd need to take when moving? I'd open that up to the floor. Anyone can answer.
Definitely. I think what would be good, if you can, if there's opportunities within your organization, is to make career moves within your company, because they're the ones that will give you the best support. We've had people move from like an EA role into interior designer. Someone's moved from recruitment to like customer care, customer experience. So I will look at whether there's opportunities internally where you can kind of make that initial move, just to get the experience underneath your belt initially, even if it's for a year, 18 months, and then make that move. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be benchmarked against candidates who have more experience than you, and experience talks and it speaks at the end of the day. The other thing that you could potentially do is make a sideways move. So be willing to kind of move for the same salary. I never really advise people to take a pay cut. Like, I don't think it's like the right thing to do. But if you're really adamant that, okay, I want to change, because you could change sector but still specialize in the same field, that doesn't necessarily mean taking a pay cut. That means just being honest and transparent, say, look, I am on X at the moment, and I am not willing to take any less than that. A company will train you and develop you on that. All you're doing, you have the core skills, you're just learning a slightly new industry, if that makes sense. But don't feel like you have to take a pay cut just to make that move, unless it's something like completely different where, I don't know, you're moving from real estate to being a doctor. Yes, you have to take that pay cut because you need to study, you need to learn, there's loads of different things that go into it. But look at it from a slightly different element. Okay, can I move into a role internally, be there for 12 months and then make that leap? Or is it a case where I make a sideways step into a slightly different sector, get the experience underneath my belt, and then grow from there? So those are my tips personally.
Cool. Did anyone else want to add?
Yeah, I'll add something just really, really quickly, just because I feel like I was in a very similar situation, being in commercial real estate for 4 years of my career, then moving to tech and a more finance-based role. And actually in the interviewer asked me, you don't have tech background, you don't have finance background, are you actually a good fit for this role? Did I smash that question in the interview? No, but actually still got the job. But on reflection, what I thought and what I've realized is my difference is actually an advantage. I'm coming from a commercial real estate background, which means that people working in tech, they haven't been necessarily exposed to that. So I can provide different ways of thinking and a diverse way of thinking because I'm coming from a different background. So definitely sometimes when you are changing industries, although it may be daunting and you feel like you don't have the experience, actually you do have a competitive advantage because you're coming from a point of difference.
I love that. Okay.
Can I say one more thing?
Go for it.
Also, in negotiating, so apart from salary, think about options. If you move, a lot of people I know move to smaller companies or high growth companies, and they may take what may be deemed as a pay cut, but then negotiate having stock options as well. So just thinking about the whole package in general, you may take a pay cut, but increase benefits in terms of your car or mortgage allowance. So just think about really what works for you and your family. And then make sure that the trajectory for growth is almost contracted. Like when I moved to a role, I had in my contract, I had it modified so the first 12 months, I had guaranteed pay increases as long as I hit certain targets and took certain actions. And that was in the original employment contract, but they had never done before, but ask. That
is a great note to end on. I didn't even know you could do that. I did not even know. I might need to hit you up, Kieran. It does, but that is so good. Well, I'm gonna say thank you to the panel. If people have questions for the panel, please pop them in now. I'll put up the final presentation slide screen now and let people give people a minute or so to think of any final questions you might have. Hopefully people can see the screen. So just so people are aware, if you want to contact us at We Rise In, we are you can get us on email, so contact at weriseinc.co.uk to join our mailing list, so that you can have access to the events that we put on, such as this. You can follow us on LinkedIn, and you can also visit our website. In terms of connecting with the speakers, you can find them all on LinkedIn. If you go to our LinkedIn page, we've our latest kind of LinkedIn post has all of their various LinkedIn connections. You can connect with them and have sort of offline conversations as well with them. So I am going to go to, can't see any questions in the chat. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Hopefully people have found the conversation useful. I did have probably some hotter questions, as it were, but I just thought, you know what, we'll keep it above board in terms of some of the statistics and stuff around change in jobs. But I think this conversation is an interesting one to have, particularly at this point, because I think we're going through what they're calling the Great Resignation, or at least the Great Realization, and people sort of off the back of the pandemic are starting to realize, maybe they weren't happy in their roles, or maybe they weren't being developed in the roles that they were in. So we thought we'd kick off this year with this particular conversation to try and support and help anyone who is looking to make that move. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing. I don't think anyone has any questions. If you do, if you think of any questions post the meeting, feel free to email us, email the speakers, connect with them on LinkedIn, and